Gentlemen, first of all, anybody here believe eugenics is coming? Building a master race?
No, sir. Absolutely not.
No. Okay, good. We're all clear on that. That's not what we're saying. Does anybody here think that Barack Obama wants to snuff out anybody's grandma? Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. But first, I want to start someplace, show you the beginnings of and the history of eugenics, which means basically creating a master race by discouraging reproduction with people with genetic defects and other undesirable traits. Please watch this. Eugenics is not a new idea, and it didn't start with the Nazis, but with American and British socialists and progressives who thought that through measures like prohibition and later birth control, they could cure the ills of modern society, such as poor public hygiene, rising population among lower classes, and urban crowding. Indiana passed the first sterilization law in 1907 for confirmed criminals, idiots, imbeciles, and rapists. And in the next 30 years, 29 other states followed suit, along with Canada and most of Europe. Eugenics infected the mindset of intellectuals such as the leader of the new liberalism movement of the early 20th century, Herbert Croly. He wrote a book in 1909 called The Promise of American Life, in which he declared that the state must, quote, interfere on behalf of the really fittest. Eugenics was also popular thought for Presidents Woodrow Wilson, Teddy Roosevelt, and their advisors. In 1912, a year before he was president, New Jersey's Governor Woodrow Wilson created a board of examiners of feeble-minded epileptics and other defectives. Under it, the state could determine, quote, when procreation is inadvisable, like for criminals, prisoners, poor kids, and the ill-defined, other defectives, end quote. Roosevelt's close advisor, Charles Van Hise, said, quote, he who thinks of himself not primarily, but of his race and of its future, is the new patriot, end quote. Former President Roosevelt later endorsed Madison Grant's Passing of the Great Race, a book that Hitler once referred to as his Bible. What most history textbooks seem to ignore is that before the Nazis took power, Germans lagged behind Americans and Europeans in eugenics. But World War I and the Great Flu pandemic basically turned doctors into social planners, and Hitler and the Nazis took the logic of public health to totalitarian extremes. They made the central policy goal affecting employment, marriage, medicine, and more. The same year Hitler joined the Nazi Party in 1920, the Nazis rounded up hundreds of thousands of disabled, elderly, and mentally ill, and exterminated them as, quote, useless bread gobblers, or life unworthy of life, end quote. Back to America. Eugenics was being effectively written into the Constitution. In the Buck versus Bell case in 1927, progressive lawyers stood on the flimsy ground of a Massachusetts vaccination law to keep Carrie Buck from reproducing. We know now she wasn't retarded. But to add insult to injury, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes infamously wrote, quote, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough, end quote. 7 years later, Hitler wrote to the president of the American Eugenics Society to ask for a copy of his famous Case for Sterilization, which called for forced sterilization of some 10 million Americans. During that year, the Nazis sterilized over 50,000 unfit Germans, which caused an American eugenicist to complain, quote, the Germans are beating us at our own game. The Nazi eugenic idea evolved naturally into the eventual Holocaust and the deaths of 6 million Jews, as well as millions of other innocent people. I want to show you a poster that I saw this morning getting ready for the show, and I want you to know that I have a daughter that was born with cerebral palsy, and they said that when she was born that she would never walk or talk or feed herself. She went to college. They were wrong. This poster bothers me so much because the hand of the person shown in this poster reminds me of my reminds me of my daughter's hand. This is from Nazi Germany. It says in German, if you can get a tight shot here, it says in German, basically, it's going to cost 60,000 marks to keep this man alive. As you see, he's sitting here with a gnarled hand. He's a sweet guy and everything, the poster says, but his quality of life, it's a shame. But your time is up. Then there is this poster. This is also from Germany in World War II. This one shows an institution here and all of the houses that could be built with the money if we could just eliminate this institution. We understand that I don't think he wants to kill your grandmother or unplug your grandmother. It would be truly an evil person that would do that. However, what happened in Germany was they couldn't afford health care for all. You see, they had devalued their mark, our dollar. They had devalued it so much because the government just started to print money. Does that sound familiar? This is a poster from Germany. See if this rings a bell to anyone or looks familiar, just in a different kind of media. This is something that translates here at the bottom to the complainer. Can you zoom in on this one? Here's the complainer. These are 4 men. Notice how ugly they are. How some of them look rich or fat or whatever. Maybe Jewish, maybe this one. I don't know. They're all the complainers. They're all standing around in a circle. And they're all standing around in a circle talking about how horrible things are and how we shouldn't do this. The parade back here are the supporters. This is a poster of what you see every day now in the news media, making the complainers, the Tea Party goers, look somehow rotten. Didn't the T4 project over in Germany? Are you familiar with the T4 project? Is anybody familiar with that? I think it's the T4 project. It was the baby. I think it was baby Nauert. Was a horribly crippled, blind, deaf. I think didn't have 2 limbs out of 4. They said it was going to be a horrible life. The parents said, please, doctors, please put him out of his misery. And Hitler came to the forefront and said, I will do it. It started as compassionate, and then it went awry. You see any parallels in history at all where an emergency would kick us into rationing? We're not even arguing when does life begin, if it's at conception or at birth. Now we're saying life doesn't really begin. I mean, I know Peter Singer says it doesn't, I think until the child can recognize that there is a tomorrow, right, that they can't, that way, I mean, you could have killed Ronald Reagan. You could kill any child up to, I think he says 2-ish. I mean, that's where we're headed here. Policies are. You have to look at the people he surrounds himself with. Okay, so those would be the roots of the tree. Who is helping him make decisions? And I want to say something. You know, we've said about the idea that it all starts out really well and then it goes awry. Germany went awry because of a couple of things. First, money. They ran out of money, so they got to make choices, tough choices, and then crazy people. As we go and tell you the roots, tell me if you think these people, they're not crazy, but tell me that they're mainstream thinkers. Forced abortions, sterilants in drinking water. I believe was it Sunstein or Holdren? Does anybody in the control room know that talked about taking children away from unfit parents? One of the pieces is money. You're going to have a problem with money. And the second is crazy people. And I don't think any of these people are crazy. But let me ask you, the people underneath this in the root system, one is a communist. They believe in forced abortions, legal rights for animals, and babies not human. Okay, well, that doesn't sound too nuts to me. May I make a connection and see if anybody agrees with it? Holdren is the key to understanding the Green Movement. How many people in the Green Movement? Holdren says we have too many people. We should have forced sterilizations. We should have forced abortions. The population is too big. How many people in the Green Movement think that people are a virus? I think that's a connection. Anybody? Nobody wants.
The connection between the Green Movement and healthcare might have something to do with the fact that the Green Movement isn't so much about Green Movement. It may be bigger notions of social control.
Well, it could be. There's another thing. Barack Obama said that he's against reparations because they don't go far enough. Universal education and universal health care is the way to help the underprivileged. The Green Movement is about, is really, Van Jones at least, is about social justice and spreading the wealth, communism. So maybe the Green Movement is that front you're talking about, and maybe that's just his way of spreading the wealth and moving all that money into social justice through health care. No? Carter?